Hey there, thanks for checking my channel, Code Rush, and for joining me as I document the process of learning to code. Now, after I successfully installed Git on my virtual machine, I will install it on my Windows host also, so outside the VM and directly on my PC. I want to do this because I want to be able to code on my native operating system, and I am not sure if I will always have the possibility of using a VM. Also, the virtual machine is slower and it's a bit frustrating. The installation of Git on Windows requires first to download Git, and that's why I am again on Git's official page. But instead of having download for Linux, I'm now having a download button for Windows, and I'm gonna click it. And it takes me to a page with more download options. I will click on the first link to get the latest 64-bit version of Git for Windows. And now Git is downloading. And the download has finished. I will double click on it here to open the installation. Now I will have to let the app make the changes on my computer. I will click yes. Okay, and now I'm seeing the installation box. And I'm gonna start the installation by pressing next. I'm asked to select a destination location, and I will leave the C location that's already selected and click next. Now I'm asked to select components, and there's a list here. I'm gonna check the additional icons because I want Git to have icons on my desktop. I'm gonna press next. Select Start Menu folder, where should Setup place the program's shortcut. I have Git already written here, and I will leave it like this because I don't want to select a different folder. Okay, next. Now I'm asked to choose the default editor used by Git. Which editor would you like Git to use? And by default, I can see Vim as Git's default editor. But I'm given a list of options, and I'm gonna select Visual Studio Code, which is my default text editor. Now I'm gonna press next. Adjusting the name of the initial branch in new repositories. What would you like Git to name the initial branch after Git init? And I have two options here. I can let Git decide, or I can choose to override the default branch name for new repositories. And in the box is already written main. From the configuration of Git on my virtual machine, I remember the Odin Project mentioned that GitHub changed the default branch from master to main. And I configured it as main in my terminal. So I will do the same here and select the second option. Okay, and click next. And now I'm asked to adjust my path environment. How would you like to use Git from the command line? I already see that the second option is recommended. So the first is use Git from Git bash only. The recommended one is Git from the command line and also from third-party software. And let's see what it says here. This option adds only some minimal Git wrappers to your path to avoid cluttering your environment with optional Unix tools. You will be able to use Git from Git bash, the command prompt, and the Windows PowerShell, as well as any third-party software looking for Git in path. And the last one is use Git and optional Unix tools from the command prompt. And this one has a warning. This will override Windows tools like find and sort. Only use this option if you understand the implications. I'm actually not at the level of understanding the implications, so I will let the second option, the one that is recommended, checked, and I will click next. And now I will have to choose the SSH executable. Which secure shell client program would you like Git to use? Again, I'm presented with two choices. Use bundled OpenSSH. This uses ssh.exe that comes with Git. Or use external OpenSSH, which apparently is a new option. This uses an external ssh.exe. Git will not install its own OpenSSH and related binaries, but use them as found on the path. I think I'm gonna let use bundled OpenSSH checked as it was and click next. Okay, and now I'm asked to choose HTTPS transport backend, and I have two options: use the OpenSSL library or use the native Windows Secure Channel library. I will let this option checked also, and I will try to modify only what I configured when I installed Git on my virtual machine. I don't remember this option being configured there, so I will let it as it is and I will press next. And now I'm asked to configure the line ending conversation. Check out Windows style commit Unix style line endings. Check out as is commit Unix style line endings, or check out as is commit as is. Again, I'm gonna let was checked already here by default, and I'm gonna press next. Okay, and now I'm asked to configure the terminal emulator to use with Git Bash. I can use mintty, the default terminal of MSYS2. Okay, that's terminal emulator, which sports a resizable window, non-rectangular selections, and Unicode font. Okay, or I can use Windows default console window, the cmd.exe. Again, I'm gonna let the option that's checked already, and I'm gonna click next. Okay, and now I'm asked to choose the default behavior of git pull. What should git pull do by default? Fast forward or merge? Rebase? Or only ever fast forward? Okay, I remember when I configured Git on the virtual machine that there was a command line that ended in something like rebase false. And in the Odin project, they said something about setting the default branch behavior to merging. So I will let the first line checked, the first option checked, and click next. And now I'm asked to choose a credential helper. Which credential helper should be configured? Git credential manager or none? I will go for the Git credential manager as it was selected and click next. Okay, configure extra options. Which features would you like to enable? Enable file system caching or enable symbolic links. Again, I'm gonna leave the first option selected as it was and click next. Okay, and now I have to configure experimental options. These features are developed actively. Would you like to try them? Okay, enable experimental support for pseudo consoles. This allows running native console programs like Node or Python in a Git Bash window without using wimpy. But it's unfortunately not quite stable yet. Well, I can give it a try. And enable experimental built-in file system monitor, which is a new addition. Automatically run a built-in file system watcher to speed up common operations such as git status, git add, git commit. Okay. I'm gonna check this one also. And now I just have to click install. Okay, and now the installation has finished. and I will select launch git bash and click finish. And here I have git bash and I can continue configuring Git in it. Now I will go back to the Odin Project lesson at the Setup Git section. I will use the lines I used to configure Git on my virtual machine, but instead of using the Linux terminal, I am now using git bash. So I will copy the first line, which will configure my username, and I will paste it in git bash. I will delete what's inside the codes, and I will add my username, code loop. Okay, I'm gonna end the code, and I'm gonna press enter. And now I will have to copy the line that allows me to configure my email. And again, paste it in git bash. I will delete the example they have inside the code. And I will go to my GitHub account now. I'm gonna follow the steps I did when I configure Git for the virtual machine. I will have to go to email settings page on my GitHub account, and under the keep my email addresses private section, I will have to copy the address that they gave me to be the email address for my GitHub account. It starts with a number, so I'm gonna copy what I have there. So this is what I've pasted in my git bash, the private mail that's on my GitHub account on the email settings page. And because I've already selected during the installation the default branch as being main, and I've set the default behavior to merging, I can skip the next lines. But let's check if I've configured my username properly. I'm gonna copy paste to verify if my username is configured. Let's see. Yeah, and it's code loop. Obviously, I will use the same GitHub account. I don't need more accounts. One GitHub account I believe is enough. Okay, and now I know it's working. Everything is configured in this section at least, and I will have now to create the SSH key. First, let's see if I have the ED25519 algorithm SSH key already installed. I'm gonna copy paste the command line that's there to check if it's installed or not. And it says no such file or directory, which means I have to create a new SSH key. So again, I'm following the same steps I made while I was configuring Git on my virtual machine. Only now, instead of using Linux terminal, I am using git bash. Okay, let's create a new SSH key. I'm gonna copy paste the command line to create one on my Windows system also. I'll delete the example email in the codes and provide my email address instead while keeping the codes. And I'm gonna click enter now. And they ask me again to enter file in which to save the key. I'm gonna just press enter. Now they ask for a passphrase or a password, and I don't want one. Again, I'm gonna press enter. They ask me to enter the same passphrase again, enter. And now I've created a new SSH key for my Windows also, and I will link it to my GitHub account. And to do this, I will use a command called cat. Here it is. I'm gonna copy and paste it. And now I can see my generated SSH key, and I can copy it from the terminal, go to my GitHub account, add settings, and click on SSH and GPG keys. And here I already have one key, which is the virtual machine key, the one that I generated for my virtual machine. And I can click on new SSH key button. Now I have to add a name for it or a title. I'm gonna call it, I have no clue how to call it. Let's call it main key, because I believe I'm gonna use Git on Windows more often than I'm gonna use Git on virtual machine. I've already decided to ditch the virtual machine in the near future, so this will be my main key. And I will let authentication key selected add the key type and copy my SSH key in the key section. All the fields are checked and I can add SSH key by pressing the button. And now I have two SSH keys. The first one is for my virtual machine and the second one is for my PC, for my Windows host. Okay, and now I will go back to the Odin Project lesson for the final and the most important step, testing my key. I will click again on the link they provide, which will take me to a page with instructions to test my SSH connection. They say to open the terminal, but I already have Git bash open, and I'm gonna copy the line they provide here and paste it in Git bash to verify my SSH key. And I received the same message as I did on my virtual machine. Hi CodeRush loop, you've successfully authenticated, but GitHub does not provide shell access. Okay, so my SSH key is working, and I guess it means I've successfully installed Git on my Windows host also. The installation of Git on Windows is not recommended by the Odin Project. I think I should mention this, but the lesson they provided helped me a lot. If you want to follow Odin's curriculum, set up Git on your virtual machine because they provide support only for Linux. Thanks for watching the video, and if you want, you can let me know in the comments which Git setup you think it's easier to follow, the one on VM or the one on Windows.